All the presenters of the first panel are on stage, please. May I have a big round of applause? So I think we have seven books coming out in the next 10 years. My brain was, one of the disadvantages of being the MC is that I shouldn't be asking questions, but I have like a million questions for all of them. So, but what we're going to do now is sort of open it up. It could be a question, it could be a comment, it could be a reaction. This is sort of open fun for a few minutes. I'll try to time it so we do it all right. And I'm going to be running around doing my aerobic workout with the microphone. We are recording this, so I would appreciate that you use the microphone so we can have it recorded for the people that did not make it today. Questions, comments, reactions? All right. Let the running begin. Hi there.
So I have two questions. One is very brief. First one is for Ashanti. Is your paper available to read anywhere? Because we really want to read the rest of it.
Does this work? No.
Oh, okay. Ooh, that's so beautiful. Yes, it will be available. We will have it on, we will have a link or something prepared for you all. All of our papers will be available later after today. Thank you so much. I'm blushing. I don't know what to say anymore. Okay, peace out. Thank you so much though. Yes, it is available. Thank you.
And then my second one is it's for both, Matthew and Maren. Basically, you will talk about two different authors, and I was wondering how much research you did, or if any, on their identities. Like, I know Anzaldúa mostly through her work in queer theory and as a queer China feminist, and Kafka as a disabled man, and how that affected his approach on shame and self-isolation. And I was just wondering if those things affected your research or anything about it.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. So I've read Borderlands, and that's as much research that I did on Anzaldúa because, one, she passed away pretty early in her life, and there is not a lot of analyzation of Anzaldúa's work out there. She does a pretty beautiful job within that book to analyze herself and her community. The chapter that I use, How to Tame a Wild Tongue, I use specifically because of the language analysis in it, and that chapter to me was like enough to represent her like in full. Like sorry, I'm not being very articulate, but it's just the way that she speaks in her writing gives you enough information to who she is as a person. And so just reading that book is like enough to fully know her. Like she gives so much personal insight that,
And Matthew was the other person that you were with?
So you're asking if their identity played into, like, can you rephrase the question again? Or answer it?
Yeah, it was essentially his identity as a disabled man, and how that plays into his themes of shame and self-isolation.
Yeah, no, definitely. Kafka. What I was more focused on in the trial was not him as like a social being, or I was more focused on the more ontological, I guess, issues pressing. So yes, I would say that his physical disabledness definitely plays a role into the ontological shame, but I was more focused on the theoretical. Does that answer your question?
Just a quick point about your first question. The capstone projects are usually archived at the Columbia College Archive, which is an online site where you can have access to it. And so I don't know exactly how soon that will happen, but it will happen. The Columbia Archives gave a presentation in our department a few weeks ago, and apparently our capstone projects are one of the largest hits of people going all over the world reading our thing. So this is not something that sort of collects dust in a library, because now libraries are online. That's pretty wonderful. More questions? Go ahead.
I want to congratulate you all for your brilliant work. Thank you very much for sharing with us this morning. I have a question for Mackenzie. So during your research, did you take a look at other local publications and kind of formulate a contrast to what Chicago Tribune is doing, and how did that contrast, I guess, more inflame your argument against Chicago Tribune?
Yeah, it actually took a long time for me to figure out what my case study was going to be, because I knew what I wanted to talk about and discuss, and I had the research behind it, but I didn't know exactly what text to look at, and it didn't come to me until I literally went on the Tribune's website, typed in crime, and saw that there was an actual script that you could see, right, so clearly. But I did do a lot of looking at social media, on Twitter feeds, the Sun-Times, the Tribune, mostly just since those are two of the largest publications, especially in Chicago, seeing how they framed crime. And it's the same on Twitter too, you know, if they have a breaking news report. It's just the topic of crime is so condensed when it's put out into the world in so many different ways, because it happens at a high rate. And journalists are like, well, we gotta get this out now. It just happened, it's 3 a.m. I gotta get it out somehow. Because that's what journalism is about. It's about promptness and being the first to report something. So it does, I would say looking at Twitter was actually a big help in just like solidifying that yes, there is something going on here that's bigger than just the Tribune, bigger than just the digital archives. Like crime photography in general follows a crime script. If you're getting photographs of like the crime scene and the mourners, and it's just like you can, once you start looking at it at a high volume, you see how similar everything is. So yeah.
I have two questions. The first question is for Amy. Amy, thank you for choosing that subject, because without us giving any recognition to climate change, none of us will be here to be doing what we're doing today. My question to you though is, are you going to do any further studies in this, and is this something that is close and passionate to you, or did you just choose the subject for you?
Yes, absolutely. Like the environment is totally my thing. Is this working? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I'm planning on taking like a year or two break from academia, and then I'm planning on doing something similar to my project, where it's marrying the environment and cultural studies, like maybe environmental communications or something like that. Definitely want to change the world.
Awesome, thank you. My second question is to Ashantia Day. You seem to have focused only on Chicago, but I was wondering, in your studies, did you go outside of the city? And if so, is this something that you're going to further study? Because we need people who can actually find the root of the problem so that we can have change.
Yes, thank you so much, Arlene Clark, aka my mother. I appreciate it. Thank you for asking such a great question. She said my name in the way. She knows what she did. Anyway, thank you so much. Yes, actually a little bit at the beginning of my research, I found a lot of information on what you all may know as the school to prison pipeline. And so I tried so hard to like do this and like not read any stuff like that, because I knew it would be my work. I was like, I would just be regurgitating information that has already been out in the world. And a lot of that information looked at the school system in New York. And because it was there's so much oversaturation of information, that I was like, let me dial it back, draw on my own personal accounts, and focus on where this sort of where this project emerged from, which was in the city of Chicago, and that gave me an advantage immediately to sort of have my own lens on the subject. And yes, I do plan to go out to the world, hopefully be an advising counselor or a counselor within a school. Specifically, I would like to do public high school and just work with people like myself and sort of just help them go out into the world and be great little humans.
Congratulations to all of you. Maren, your work has made me rethink about a project that I have been working on, so that's a comment. Thank you. And Ashanti, I hope you're doing more than becoming a counselor. I hope you will become a superintendent in the Chicago Public School. And I really also am not satisfied with just a book coming out. You've given us a task to, mentor one student at a time, but I also, like you, I mean, this is too much burden for you, but
No, this is great, I'm here.
We need to change one principle at a time also, and I know that it exists in suburban schools as well, and to students not just of African American, descent, but really students of color, and it's widespread. It's very, very serious. So thank you for your work and congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations, everybody. I just want to add a question, a general question for everyone about the research process. I love research, and I wonder what you loved about it and whether there was a moment that you can recall and that you will remember where your project kind of took shape or turned a corner or something. Congratulations, Steve.
Thanks, Rob. Okay, so this actually happened way too late in the game, and it was really frustrating for me, but it was the most powerful thing I've ever had to shift in writing. So Dr. Molly McKibben, who is my advisor on the project, sat down with me about a month ago, and I was really frustrated with where my paper was going. I had no idea what the actual through line was, and it was kind of just 3 sections that didn't correlate in any way. And she got me to kind of just relax and be like, why did you do this project? Why was, when you thought, when did you think of this? When was it? And it actually was in Carmela's class 2 years ago. And I came to the realization that Anzaldúa and Frantz Fanon, who's another theorist that I use in my paper that I didn't mention today, their theories make me cry every single time I read them. They are the most powerful theories to me that I have read in my career here. And so I restructured my whole paper rather than just having these 3 parts, and the middle part was about Anzaldúa and Frantz Fanon. So they weren't throughout the whole paper, they were just in the middle. And I made my thesis that Anzaldúa and Fanon are powerful people, and they had so much to give to society, and this is how you see them. So taking them and being this is what I want to show you, rather than having a small part of them. But it made it so much easier even to write because I loved it.
Other people?
The hardest part about research is knowing when to stop. Because even when I was just editing and revising the final way through, I was like, but what if I put this in there? Or I would look at an article I printed off and was like, I highlighted this and that's not in there. So the project constantly shifts. What it was last semester, what it was 2 months ago, what it was a month ago, was not what it is right now. And it wasn't until the end where I realized you have multiple kind of light bulbs go off above your head throughout the process. And that happened so many times. And I think the last one wasn't until a couple weeks ago when I was like, that's it. So it's constantly shifting, but knowing when you just have to stop taking in other material and start really focusing on what you have to say based off of that was definitely the hardest part for me.
I tried to write about phenomenology, and now I have to redo it. So that's probably the hardest part.
Any others?
Hey, Rob.
Hey,
Other comments, other questions? Oh, Madrena's here. I'm sorry. I acknowledged you at the beginning of the presentation, but I thought you were in another planet doing research because you were sabbatical. Thanks for coming back.
Thank you. No, this was a real pleasure. So the comment I wanted to, you guys have worked so hard. You know that I know you work hard, and I wanted to say on the record, because Carmela said this was recording, that I acknowledge and I see the work that you guys have done, and I'm very proud. My question is actually very serious, which is, what are you guys going to do on Monday?
The future.
Sleep.
Jordan had that. Go to work.
Well, okay.
So
There is a
now,
Monday. There is a Monday after all. There will be a Monday.
it will
What's
be
happening
many
on
more
Monday?
Mondays. But now shifting from learning in the institution of education, I will be shifting my time to working and making money under the capitalist mode. And, hopefully spending that money doing creative things, which gets back to the individual and all of that, you know. But no, seriously, working. But thank you. Oh my God, we love you too.
I love you back.
Quick question for Jordan. So are there any other like coined terms that occur in the hip hop conversation?
Wait, can you repeat that?
Are there other like coined terms that occur in the hip hop conversation that kind of strike a nerve, like similar to no homo?
I mean, just the word bitch, probably. Yeah. I mean, you know, there's a whole list. I mean, that's the first one that comes to mind. That, like, I covered that too in my paper. Yeah, I don't know. I'm a short answer.
My question is also for Jordan. I was wondering what inspired you to do this topic. Do you have a connection to hip hop and or poetry yourself?
Yeah, so I'm a musician. I've been a musician for a long time. That's all my free time outside of this is music. And so that was like my first connection to hip hop, was just playing music, playing with all these different bands, playing with rappers and stuff. And I kind of first got introduced really to poetry last year, like last spring. And I had a friend named Michael, who's a rapper and poet, and he put me on to this book to the Breakbeat Poets book, and encouraged me to read that. And I read that, and that basically like changed my life. I highly recommend everybody read it. There's a new volume that just came out called Black Girl Magic. Definitely get about that. Yeah, so that's after I read that, I just really learned like how powerful poetry is, and it encouraged me to start writing it myself. And you know, it's just been a journey since then.
And I also want to ask my sister Mackenzie. So now that you've done all this research and you want to be a journalist, what are you going to do differently, and how are you going to bring this forward in your work?
Yeah, so the conclusion of my thesis is kind of how journalists can more thoughtfully approach the communities they report on. And one of the main things is seeking out stories that create a less monolithic image of communities, so actively seeking out positive stories when communities of color are working together in community, individuals acting toward a better change, to creating, it's because what crime does is it creates this monolithic view of communities. So creating a more in-depth, having the background, critically analyzing the work we're doing, how is it formulaic, what might it be communicating, taking a step back from the fast pace and thinking about how more in-depth reporting and more nuanced reporting and just seeking out a variety of topics, a variety of coverage, can help create, hopefully, a more expansive, broader, realistic view of what communities of color, we're all people, what they do, what we can do together, and just kind of trying to erase those boundaries.
Maybe one more question?
You all did it, by the way.
They most certainly did. Yep.
Alright, so I just want to say congrats to all you guys, 'cause it's like a lot of work and pretty crazy. But my question's for Matthew. So I was really interested about the fact that you kind of chose Kafka, because he's kind of a really tragic figure, and at most people, the deepest they get is metamorphoses. But so yeah, I guess the question is, how did you, why Kafka? I guess, especially with Althusser, like why Kafka in particular? He's often overlooked. So.
Well, I guess I could bring it back to my first answer, and let me know if how much time I have.
Yes.
If I talk too long, cut me off.
Oh, I'll let you know. I'm sweet but hard.
To answer the first question I was asking, also I was drawn to Kafka as as sort of like the philosopher's writer, I guess, meaning that his work can sort of be like the Kafka as subject, or like Kafka's protagonist, and sort of embody like an ethos that can expand his entire course of work. So it was a good subject for me in that sense. Also, it was a good insight, sort of, the only way I can describe it is like I have Louise Althusser's theory of ideological interpolation, right? And Kafka is like the closest thing I can get to like a painting of what I can conceive the experience of Althusser's theories. Like, does that make sense? Does that really that? So through his fiction, it is like a good, it can be used as like a good literary tool, but also like the artistic side, I guess, the artistic mode of fiction, to critique ideology.
Awesome. One last round of applause.